1st in February.
And we're starting with Claudia, so go ahead, Claudia.
Hello.
It's wrong on the end.
We're with 35 other people and getting on a bus and leaving cold Buffalo. The theme was the Riviera holiday on the southern part of France. And us women were just dying to see something green after all the cold and blistery weather up here. That's what we're looking forward to. All right. Okay, John.
Next one.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
What? And I just pushed up.
No, you want to go down.
I just pushed down.
Okay, hit the space bar.
We had this working.
It was working great.
Right. I'm using page down. Okay. Okay, a little bit of, there we go. I don't know what I did.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. One of the things I discovered when I got there was that there was a big display of roses, specifically to honor Princess Grace, who had lived in the Philadelphia area and whose husband wanted to honor her since the theme of the show was this. And at one time, she actually had come back from Monaco and judged at the show. And since we just had this wonderful presentation with Bob, I looked up the history of the Princess Grace Rose and its ambassador and peace rose. Now, I am very familiar with the peace rose. Is anybody familiar with the ambassador rose, which this also came from?
No, I don't have it.
But it really looks a lot like the peace rose when I'm looking at this closely. But this was just amazing to walk into something with one of my favorite flowers, all about roses.
Wow. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
So what we ended up going into was a convention center that covered 225 acres of absolutely gorgeous flower on top of flower on top of flower. You go up the escalator, you have 3 different doors to go into. You have an off area where you could go off on the side if you wanted their theme brunch or do a butterfly, a hands-on butterfly exhibit. I spent my whole time in the show. There was just plenty to see. And when you went through the 3 doors, they were pretty directed. Somebody that just going there to shop the latest, hottest things from vendors, they had a row for vendors. They had a show within a show of what we traditionally call in our garden clubs a flower show. And they had a special little section right in front for youth who wanted to do exhibiting at the Philadelphia Flower Show. And then they had the hall that was made to awe and inspire you because the stuff was just beautiful. It didn't matter if you were into annuals, perennials, there was something there for everybody wherever you turned. Flowers on top of flowers on top of flowers, and they're fresh, they're gorgeous. They get in there at 8 o'clock in the morning and they refresh everything for the 10 days of the show. Literally pull the spent flowers and insert new ones. They got that kind of budget. And if you're so inclined, you can pay a prime fee and go in when nobody else is there at 8 o'clock for like individual tours, behind the scenes. They offer all of that stuff too. And as I said, Princess Grace was actually born and raised in Philadelphia. I didn't know that. And spent most of her life there before she got involved with her actress and getting, finding the love of her life and moving over to France. There's all kinds of flowers, no matter which way you turn. And it doesn't matter if you go left or right. There are no dead spaces in this place. You got a little crack, they stick a flower there. If you want to look up, there's arbors, there's towers of flowers. They had a ship mast of flowers. There are flowers no matter. This is walking into the grand entrance and there's those lovely, gorgeous orange roses. And of course, if you're a gardenaholic, you're looking for those blue flowers, and they had blue flowers to amaze you. But it didn't matter which way you turned. There was this kind of arrangement, that kind of arrangement, high, tall, dense, full. But just look how tight those roses are. They're just perfect. This is day 4 out of day 10. it looks like the first day walking into me. They got straw flowers. They got all kinds of little things in between. Remember, they have a flower everywhere. Doesn't matter what kind of color you want, what kind of exposure you want. They were emphasizing the desert climate because of the Riviera and that kind of zone and the dryness and the aridness there. But there were definitely people that kind of stretched it and put in what they wanted. Chenille, it's a very popular flower. Sometimes we use in, arrangements or for annual punches of color. Well, this is what it would look like if it was growing out in the desert. Here's one of my favorite things. I was walked in and surrounded by oranges. Not one orange. Beside you, in front of you, near the base, up on top. It was 15 feet of solid oranges. And if you didn't like oranges, they had a few lemons in between. Now, you got to know what you're dealing with. Now, I have to admit, I wasn't going to get down on my hands and knees and read the labels. But for those who wanted to, they had a lot of labels and a lot of accent lighting if you wanted to know the exact type, the exact variety, so you could go home and buy it. No problem. This is a very odd tropical flower. I've never seen this bloom. It was fragrant, besides being pretty. That's why I probably took the picture because it just stunned me. What kind of combos to be together? Okay, we got peonies, tulips, and some more spring flowers. Any kind of combo, they were trying to awe and amaze you. They had walk-up demonstrations. They had what they called pop-ups. If you wanted to learn something specific about gardening, if you had certain problems you wanted to go through, if you wanted a demonstration on how to do a certain arrangement, they had that in the back for those who wanted to do that. Spring. I can't get enough spring. Remember, it's the first week in March. It's miserable. It's so nice to look at some color and see some fragrance. Even if it may not be typical for the area, it was so beautiful just to keep turning around and seeing more flowers.
Mhm.
Purple, red, white, whatever you wanted to. Lighting accents. Green. Green is its own flower with the shades and stuff like that. There was something for that. This one also had some smell. That's why I lingered here. It smelled wonderful.
Claudia, what's in the, oops, go back for 1 second. What's in the far right-hand corner? Is that, it looks like a
white flower. Yeah.
white flower? Look at that.
That's what I mean. You got something everywhere. You know how many times, I'm going to talk about Plantasia lovingly because I've seen the progression of Plantasia through the years. But all of a sudden you see a basket over here or an extra lamp over here or an extra vendor over here. They don't need it at Philadelphia. They got flowers every time you turn around. They line the outside of it with their vendors, their food vendors, their pop-up things. But as I was telling you, John, I was floored because one of the things they had was their pop-up refreshment cart that went through the house.
Wow.
Adult refreshment cart, as I said in nice terms. I didn't indulge because number one, you have to want to walk. They have very few chairs. The rolling walkers are like jammed in because we had 150 buses appear on one day for this show.
Oh my gosh.
So we're elbow to elbow and nose to nose at prime time. So, and there's very few chairs. You got to walk. You can look, but when you wanted to sit down because you wanted a milkshake or if you wanted a cocktail or whatever else was going on, you had to wait a while to find it. But they had a flower everywhere. Now, I'm in the spring gardening, anybody that knows me with the daffodils, but I normally would not have hosta leaves in between and azaleas in the back, but they certainly made every corner, nook and cranny interesting. Here's the thing that I was struck by because we're in the desert, color in the desert. Maybe not my choice of wonderful color, but they offer something to give you ideas and suggestions about everything.
Mhm.
And no, got to have a border thing. You can't have that big space for people to walk through. So they had an upper garden and this little border garden. I think those are landscape roses. I probably got it wrong and Steve can correct me, but they stuck my favorite flower everywhere in this show. I couldn't turn around and not see another rose. I was blown. And spring is beautiful. So what do we have? We have our lazy river of fake grass, you know, lovely glass. Then we have our green river of annulating different flowers, and then subtle blues and whites in the front. I'm like, okay, I would love to do this, but I don't have the budget to do it, but it looks pretty. Then we came to my highlight. All right, now, so basically this is about 15 by 20 feet. It's crammed with roses all the way around. The centerpiece of this highlight exhibit was a replica of her wedding dress up on a stage altar. But every time you turn around in this exhibit, there is something to get you. And I took the time to look at some of this stuff because they tried to make these little vignettes blend in. You still saw the roses, but for those who wanted to read everything, this is all about her talking about her favorite flower, which she basically told everybody she didn't have one. Every flower has a purpose. Everything is wonderful. But I do have to admit that in my wedding bouquet, maybe in yours, you didn't have an orchid that came from Brazil like she did, which she had woven into the silver lace in her bodice of her dress to match the flower in her bouquet. That was a little something unique that I didn't know. And she wrote a book about her favorite flowers, but she talks about a buttercup in this thing as much as she does about this very unique orchid that was a butterfly orchid that she carried on her wedding day. And I know some of these may better be in focus and not, but I want to tell you, I didn't see a bad rose. I didn't see a black spot. All I just kept turning around, and I did spend an extended period at this little section of I couldn't get enough of the roses. It didn't matter which type or kind. So this is more about the fact about she wanted to know, what do you carry and what do you want to do it? But honestly, I really didn't have, I don't know you ladies, but I didn't embroider a flower into my Swiss lace into part of my wedding gown. But she did, which is wonderful. And in the midst of all this stuff, there's a rose bouquet there, there's roses there are roses here, there's roses here. And they're all smelling wonderful in the middle of March. This pink thing, which is mostly very much like hers, even if I don't have the label showing on this one, look how full and luscious it is. I just can't say enough. She actually walked a group of rose petals on the steps up to the altar for her wedding day. Amazing. I'm sorry. And the one on the bottom versus the one on the top is hers. There were 8. What did I find out today? There was 8 different roses that were developed for her love of roses and as a memorial to her afterwards. One of which was named for her daughter, which I just found out a few minutes ago, Bonnie purchased, which has gotten many awards for, which we'll have a close-up in a few minutes. Here's her rose. I think it's gorgeous. I just couldn't take enough pictures of even if they didn't come out the way I wanted them to, I kept trying. They didn't matter if they put different ones together and this kind of stuff. They were all just gorgeous. That's all I can say. And I would love to have walked the steps up. I think I had 1 or 2 white roses in my bouquet, but that was about it. But what a way to walk into your wedding. And yes, of course, the same thing. So there is a garden in Monaco that he started that has been going for over 30 years. And I mean, the prince, now taken over by her son, Albert II, that has over 300 varieties from 1400 to the present, because this was his mother's favorite flower, was the roses. There is a statuette in there. They have rotating flowers that rebloom, but The main garden is just roses. And this whole exhibit was to mimic some of the highlights of what is there if you ever get to Monaco. This is the one that Bonnie purchased. And maybe somebody knows why they classify this as a romantic rose. What does that mean?
I don't know what that means. That's not a class of rose by rose standards.
That's what I thought, Steve, but I was wondering if you knew. They call it a romantic rose, and I'm like, huh? And I didn't know if you'd ever heard of that, and I've never heard of it. Yes, it's a hybrid tease, but it's also called a romantic rose.
It might just be the way it was marketed by whoever owns the patent.
Well, now it's Maryland, Meiland, which I probably am very poorly pronouncing. But this was named after her daughter, Charlene. This is her rose, and this has won numerous awards, and that's what they're talking about. But, of course, they had that in the display. Yes, they had the stories, how she grew up with roses. She sold flowers to her neighbors. She didn't know that she was going back to selling flowers to the same people that she had picked flowers out of their gardens from. Oh, well. She wrote a book on flowers. She wrote poetry on flowers. That's how much she was enthralled with flowers. Little flower, you are the lucky one. You suck up all the lovely sun. You stand and watch it all go by and never once do bat an eye, while others have to fight and strain against the world and every pain of living. You must too have wars to fight. The cold, bleak darkness of every night, of a vigor vine which seeks to grow and is able to stand the rain and snow, and know you never let it show on your pretty face. Written as a teenager.
Beautiful.
She obviously this was her lifetime and this was her love. And as I said, I kept looking for the faded rose, the one that was nope, not there. This is more the outline of the history of the garden that was revamped in 2014. And the 10 varieties, I did not find any more information on it. It's something I'm probably going to still look into because of just curiosity of the little bit I learned more today about this love that they wanted to romanticize. They wanted to sell into this garden and just spread for everyone else to know how much roses have developed. Now, Steve, what do we know about roses in the 14th century? I never heard of that before.
In the 1300s, they could be just species roses or ancient, very old type of early hybridized roses.
Okay.
That they were doing stuff with the species roses.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, species roses go back thousands of years.
See, I've had them in my garden, but it's now interesting to hear more of these details. It's fascinating to learn this piece of it. Here's her rose. I don't know how they pick which one to put under the glass for the day. I wish them luck because they all look the same to me. Now, this is a true flower show. You go around and they have different ways of exhibiting flowers. So they had all these panels of building facades because over there they built homes on cliffs. So there was a very shallow place to put everything. So all the buildings were in height. So if you wanted to have a garden, it had to do this very narrow space and go upwards. Or as you can kind of see over here, a whole ton of window boxes. That works too when you have little land and you want a place for people to live. Didn't matter. The flowers they put together were breathtaking. The colors, the shades, the varieties, things I've never seen before. That's why I love the Philadelphia Flower Show. It catches your eye no matter which way you turn. If you don't like something, just go to another corner. You'll find something else you like. For those that are on a little bit different, they actually had a railroad show in the middle of this, with the flowers going around with the railroad. Not that I took pictures of it, but there's something for everybody. Now, of course, I love the idea of a roof, but you know why I took this picture? Look at those white roses. Of course, I don't think I would ever be able to grow roses on my roof up here, but I love the idea that somebody else could. It's just gorgeous. This is just to show they had a plan for everybody. This is a very common geranium up here that has grown more for the leaves than the flowers. But they had something, you turn around, there's a flower here, you turn around, there's a flower here, turn around, there's a space here, there's something to fill in. They found something to fill it in. Arrangements. Do you want them high? Do you want them narrow? Do you want them draping down? Do you want them arching? Do you want to have spring colors? What kind of flowers do you want to put together? Something for everybody. Now, I don't know if I could eat at this table, but one of the things we do at flower shows in the garden club is a tablescape. And this is an absolutely breathtaking tablescape. I mean, everything's just packed in there with such combinations of color and symmetry and really showing. Now, I took this one and you can see why. I mean, we've done a lot of extremes, and I don't think we'd ever do this in a rose show. But I don't think we'd ever have marshmallows in a rose show. What do you think, Maggie? I lost Maggie, but I just couldn't resist that. Because it's like, well, I understand we wanted some white color, and maybe there wasn't anything white available, but marshmallows? Okay, something different for everybody. You are crammed in. There is narrow spaces to get back and forth. That's why, they claim they're handicap accessible. You'd have to have one of those very narrow walkers to get through these spaces because there is flowers and exhibits and pop-ups and vendors everywhere. I'm sorry, I took this one because where's the bed? Where are we supposed to sleep on this thing? And of course, I'm probably not, but those coral salmons looks like they could be roses that somebody stuck in there because there's everything else in hydrangeas and other wonderful, luscious flowers in there. But it's absolutely gorgeous. And of course, they have to have a headboard of these white flowers. Anemones coming up out of there because we got to have a flower for everybody. Now, some people like succulents. So what do you how do you display them? Egg shapes. And you can see the people in the back. You can see how crammed in everybody is. It was like that all day long. They try to do the new and unique. Yes, it is plastic. Yes, it's cellophane, but they put flowers in it. It makes it look a little bit interesting, like it's a stream. But I don't care. You can still see it's crumpled up, plastic. They have a flower show in the middle of the center, separating where the vendors are and all the exhibits are. And they have a special section just for children to do an own flower show, besides all the adults and the Philadelphia Horticultural, the garden clubs, their begonia group. There's a rock group. I never knew there were so many groups, but you get educated. Why did I take this picture? Because it's a blue flower. Why do we want blue flowers? I don't know. This was bred for Longwood, and it's got their name on it, and I'm sure it's extremely expensive, but it's a blue flower, and for some reason, people love blue flowers. This was just an interesting combination with the different kinds of flowers all put together. And obviously somebody else agreed with me that the green leaves and the textured leaves and the variation on the leaves with just one flower shooting up really made an interesting combination. This is a very common houseplant. So there is something for everybody to show at the Philadelphia Flower Show if you got the time and the energy and you want to participate. I've grown this plant myself. Mona lavender. Succulents. Yes, the world loves succulents. We want to have a plant we can put in the ground, forget about, and you can overwater it, or you can just forget about it. Wait a little longer, forget about it again, and then maybe after that it needs a little water and still looks wonderful. Another prize winner. Why? I loved how this overflowed. This just overflowed, and where can you stick another flower? I don't know, but it looks wonderful. Rock garden. Here's a rock garden. You know, all these little things just have a composition all by themselves. And when you put them in with the symmetry or the almost symmetry, they describe their own thing. This is, remember we did the terrarium with Julie last year and Rose. This is what made me think about it. This is all enclosed in plastic, even that you can't see it too well with the picture. You know, it's a self-contained scape of their own garden, like it would be in somebody's backyard with a little green stream and
I like
whatever
it.
else.
Mm.
I did get stuck by the leaves on this. They're probably not that interesting. I thought they were a little unique, so that's why that ended up it. And I'll be honest, I took this picture because I had ghost in it, and I got stuck because it said ghost. And it was in the winter because the shades, the just subtle difference in shades on this plant, which has got maybe 7 plants in this one container. It's gorgeous. And anybody that knows me well, every Mother's Day weekend, it's traditional for me to have tulip season. And how can you not get me happy is for me to turn a corner and see this 10-foot by 15-foot jam-packed row of my favorite tulips. It's just me. Darwin Harbins, they come back every year for at least 3 to 4 years. That's why they're my favorite kind of tulip. I thought I was in Holland. And then we get back to my other favorite for the other time of year. If you don't know where else to put your roses, how about putting them in a rolling basket? I want to know how they kept all these roses fresh for 10 days. They all looked gorgeous. They were perfect. And, you know, I keep thinking that they're going to fade. They're going to, you know, have a bad center. I think one of the judges told me about looking at the center. I never saw that for the whole day. And if that's not good enough, just let's look up at an arch of roses. That's even better. And so, like I said, they had pop-ups. So people wanted to learn about how to put a container together, what to do in a small space. Or they had one little rolling card about, here's 5 flowers, how do you arrange them? They gave two ladies in the audience 15 minutes to do an arrangement with 5 flowers, and there was some kind of nominal prize as to who came up with the right thing. They did pop-ups, and they would explain how to do different things, just to make a nice variety, other than if you really wanted to walk through some more flowers, there was plenty of time to do it. You don't even see a dent into the different arrangements they did here. They had ikebana, which is a Japanese form of arrangements. They had miniatures, they had large. They had all kinds of arrangements. I'm more into gardening. So obviously I was drawn to this gorgeous roof, which I know 2 people have roofs like this in the city of Buffalo that are still growing strong. Maybe not this succulent, but they are definitely green roofs, and they're going good. And this lady I know that's a master gardener is doing this in South Buffalo. Now you have a small space. What do? You have little bags. You put different things in it. You have all this other kind of stuff. The horticultural high schools had little competitions who could come up with the best exhibit, and they would go for prizes, how they labeled them and what was going on. They were like adults, you know, pretty much, you know, getting ready to go out into the industry and work if they wanted to. They were as knowledgeable as the horticulturists from the Horticulture Society, explaining what they put together and why they did it that way. And as I said, for those who wanted to, there was yards and feet of different arrangements, including a whole roped off section just on miniature flower arrangements. These are like 1 inch by 2 inches. And they had a little white string to keep everybody close when they were going around it, because if you didn't get up front, you would go right by the flower and miss the whole thing. Here's one of my favorites. What do you do in a small space and you want vegetables? Well, they certainly figured out how to make this thing grow and grow and grow and grow. 7 foot tall tomato bush. Okay, a little bit beyond me, but look at those tomatoes they grew. And there's all kinds of little things in there. So there's some edible flowers. What a wonderful patio for somebody in a small space. If you don't like that, here's yellow flowers and cherry tomatoes. You don't want regular tomatoes? Grow cherry tomatoes. equally as tall, luscious, and so full and jam-packed. It was gorgeous. All right, everybody's got to have a different container. This was one of those old-fashioned rolling carts with the two things in the front where you would have put the ox in or somebody to pull it. There was not a bare spot in the back of this thing that a flower wasn't popping up on. And this is the part that gets me. Not one dead flower in the whole arrangement. Oh my goodness, day 4. Of course, you know, I turn around and I have to take the picture because it's like, I'm in love. I don't even need to know what type of flower in rose it is. It's just gorgeous. But one of the neat things I just noticed now, because we're in this climate, they have a lemon in the back, probably just as an accent or bring out the color of the rose. I would have never thought of putting an actual lemon slice in with an arrangement. I don't know if that's cool or not, and I know that's going to not last, so that's fresh for today. Here we go. Another turnaround, and my favorite is there. I went back through it. I never went to any place to eat. I was so busy just walking around the flowers. I didn't spend much time looking at the vendors. I was one of those chips. Because look it, I turn around and there's another one. And if you don't like that, here's some daffodils. Okay, narcissus. Back to my tulips. I'm sorry. This is my spring garden and I'm in heaven. And of course, I have to end with this. Now, people asked about the vendors. There is a whole section for vendors. Let me tell you, last year's show, the big thing was a non-kink metal lightweight hose. I think at least 4 came home on the bus with us. Now, I'm not sure how this works with the thaw and the freezing up here in the north, but these women were enthralled with this lightweight hose that never kinks and would be just wonderful for all summer. That vendor did a great job selling. And it would be like different kinds of bulbs they would sell or plants that you could take home. People were looking for the rare and unusual. People were looking for tools to make life easier. Some people were into decorative things. There's a vendor for everybody, including at least 4 different vendors that just offer different kinds of seed packets. So if you were looking for something totally unique, they probably had it at the Philadelphia Flower Show. Any questions I can answer?
Wow. I don't have any questions.